by the start of 1942, Taras Bulba had also been hoping for recognition of Ukraine, of their aspirations for national independence. When it started becoming apparent that the Germans had no such plans, Taras Bulba and his men started growing wary of the Germans, and they started sending letters where they were threatening to end their cooperation with them. There was especially one letter in the spring of 1942 that was written by Taras Bulba to the Reichskommissar of Ukraine, Erich Koch, so the German who was responsible for the military administration of all of Ukraine, in which he accused the Germans of persecuting the local Ukrainians, of confiscations of food, of various types of repressions, and in some cases massacres of Ukrainian villages. And he told Reichskommissar Koch that unless this stops, then the Bulbovцы would have to end their cooperation with the Germans. At the same time, he started negotiating with some of those Soviet partisan units that had been left behind, trying to reach an accommodation with them instead. But in the end, instead, negotiations on both fronts collapsed. There was a final attempt in which he corresponded with the head of security, German security, in Volhynia and Podolia, Dr. Putz, and he proposed again that the Germans would give national independence to the Ukrainians in the region, that they would free all Ukrainian underground fighters. Dr. Putz said that that was way above his pay grade, that was for somebody in Berlin to decide, that all he could really do was to release the imprisoned men that were under the command of Taras Bulba himself, but not the other Ukrainians that were under the command of Stepan Bandera or Andriy Melnik, who led another wing of the Ukrainian organization of nationalists. This is when finally Taras Bulba had enough. He broke off relations with the Germans, went underground, and soon started attacking German units. This fighting went on throughout 1942, and by 1943, the luck of war had changed a lot for the Germans. Finally, they had lost. First, they had lost the Battle of Stalingrad. In 1943, they had also lost the Battle of Kursk, and the Soviet army was starting to advance in Ukraine. So this was a moment in which many things changed. Also, at that time, Taras Bulba was trying to negotiate with the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists to form some kind of alliance and unification between the organizations. He reached out to the so-called OUN-B, so led by Stepan Bandera, B after his last name Bandera. Then also he tried to reach out to OUN-M after the name Melnik, led by Andriy Melnik. He managed to reach an agreement with Melnik, and they started uniting their organizations into one. OUN-B, however, had very different plans for Ukraine. They did not want to see any competition by other Ukrainian centers of political and military resistance. So they started sending out threatening letters to Taras Bulba to subordinate into their units, something which he refused to do. In the meanwhile, he had created a new organization. This Politian Sich had been transformed. The Politian Sich was the name when they were still cooperating with the Germans. Once they had went underground and started fighting against the Germans, they had renamed themselves as the Ukrainian Insurgent Army, or UPA. This was something that OUN-B were very worried about, and by the spring of 1943, they had declared that they themselves would form their own Ukrainian insurgent army, so taking the same name, creating some confusion as people when they heard that there was a band calling themselves the Ukrainian Insurgent Army that were attacking various military units or civilian villages in certain areas, they had a hard time knowing whether these were the old OUNB or whether the old Bulbovtsi. So after a while, Taras Bulba decided to abandon that name and take a new one, the Ukrainian Insurgent Revolutionary National Army instead.
Adam, I'm just going to have to interrupt you there because, as usual, we've come to the end of the segment, but we'll pick it up next time. I've had to interrupt Adam almost in mid-sentence, but fear not, if you join us next time, as we hope you will, we'll pick up the story. In the meantime, thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you next time on Poland Daily History.